All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. And honestly, let's fundamentally rethink everything we just sort of assume about enterprise IT architecture. Because for 3 decades now, we've all just accepted the doctrine of centralized ERP. And look, it was an idea born in the 1990s out of pure economic necessity, back when compute and bandwidth were incredibly scarce. But today, that necessity has completely evaporated, and yet the doctrine is still hanging around. So we're going to dismantle that centralized model today and explore what's known as the architectural inversion, utilizing a framework called emergE.
Here's our quick roadmap. We're covering 1. The ERP trap. 2. Distributed intelligence. 3. AI agents. 4. The K9L layer. 5. Zero trust security. And 6. Timelines and TCO. We are going to rigorously prove exactly why a distributed AI-native framework is just hands down the superior, more secure, and wildly cost-effective operational model for the modern mid-market enterprise.
Okay, Section 1. The centralized ERP trap. Now, as IT professionals, you already know the reality here. Centralized architecture essentially forces every single department to adapt its actual day-to-day working processes to fit the software's rigid data model, rather than the software adapting to the work. And notice the stark contrast between what your CFO actually approves on the visible budget, the licenses, the system integrator fees, the cloud hosting, and that terrifying 1.8x to 2.4x hidden cost multiplier that is just quietly draining your resources. What you don't see on paper is the 15 to 30% efficiency loss that hits when a department is forced into process redesign. And you certainly don't see the sprawling shadow IT that your team suddenly has to manage just because employees are building their own workarounds to simply do their jobs.
73%. Just let that sink in for a second. That brutally high number represents the failure rate of traditional ERP implementations to meet their original objectives within 3 years. That staggering adaptation tax, combined with those agonizing deployment delays, well, it's exactly why a new approach isn't just a nice-to-have anymore. It's absolutely vital.
Which brings us to Section 2, Distributed Intelligence and ECN Nodes. So the crucial point here is how we actually fix this mess. And that lies at the very core of the architectural inversion, shifting intelligence away from a monolithic center and pushing it directly out to the edge. Instead of waiting around for IT to provision a new module, a single department receives an edge compute node, or ECN. Think of it as a dedicated shoebox-sized localized hardware unit. It runs AI agents that build completely bespoke software tailored to that specific department's exact terminology and workflow rhythms. You're bringing the compute power right to the people actually doing the work, which completely eliminates the bottleneck of top-down mandates and grants immediate departmental operational autonomy. Of course, to avoid massive, unpredictable cloud inference costs, an ECN needs some very specific technical specs under the hood. We're talking about Apple M4 Pro Silicon featuring an ARM-based SoC architecture. But the absolute secret sauce here is the 48 gigabytes of unified memory. That creates a unified pool across the CPU, GPU, and neural engine, which means you can run powerful 30 to 70 billion parameter AI models completely locally. And you're doing it at incredible speeds, for roughly $2,800 a unit. A comparable traditional centralized server setup to pull that off, that would easily run you tens of thousands of dollars.
Moving right along to Section 3, AI agents building local software.
Because, let's be real, having a wildly powerful shoebox on a desk doesn't really help anyone if it doesn't translate into working software. So here is where the magic happens, and you don't spend months writing a single line of code. First, a staff member makes a natural language workflow request. Simple, right? Next, the local builder agent instantly generates the functional, bespoke code for that request. Crucially, this software is then deployed locally in completely isolated Docker or Podman containers, which enforces strict API-first contracts right from day one. Finally, the integration agent steps in to manage exactly how this newly containerized app communicates with the outside world. It is literally bottom-up value realization almost instantly.
Section 4. Connecting Silos. The K&L layer. Now, I know exactly what you IT leaders are screaming at your screens right now. How does this highly distributed network of local containers actually integrate? Aren't we just building massive data silos? Well, enter NILE, the Knowledge Native Integration Layer. This is the glue. It's not your traditional enterprise middleware. It's a non-centralized integration architecture that genuinely acts like a living institutional brain. Instead of forcing every single department into one giant, fragile database schema, NILE utilizes a shared semantic corporate knowledge vault to propagate actual business meaning across the network, ensuring everything stays synchronized organically. The protocol stack here shows exactly how the integration agent allows different departments to talk seamlessly.
It uses a lightweight event bus, specifically NATs, to broadcast real-time operational events, completely sidestepping any centralized server bottlenecks. On top of that, the agent tool protocol exposes what each local node is actually capable of, while the agent delegation protocol allows these agents to execute really complex cross-departmental tasks automatically. For example, if sales closes a massive deal, the event bus instantly broadcasts that, immediately triggering the local agents in supply chain and finance to update their respective operational states. Boom. Done. Section 5. Zero Trust Security and Identity.
Naturally, if you're distributing your architecture this widely, you need an ironclad cybersecurity strategy. You have to treat every single local node as a potential attack vector. By combining local hardware encryption with centralized identity management, the emergE Zero Trust Stack is incredibly robust. First, you physically protect the departmental data right on the ECN using full disk encryption and macOS secure enclaves. Then, you logically isolate the nodes using strict VLAN network segmentation. Finally, a centralized identity manager handles SSO and OAuth 2.0, issuing short-lived, highly capability-scoped JWT tokens directly to the distributed AI agents. This guarantees that even if a department node is somehow compromised, the blast radius is fiercely restricted to only what that specific token can touch.
And finally, Section 6, Timelines, TCO, and Value. Let's look at the financial and timeline realities that make this architectural shift undeniably compelling, especially for mid-market firms who just cannot survive multi-year digital disruptions. When we contrast the agonizing sluggishness of centralized waterfall ERPs against the rapid deployment of emergE, it is mind-blowing. Look at the time to first value. Traditional implementations take 18 to 36 months of pain before you see a single drop of ROI. With emergE's bottom-up architecture, a department is actively seeing operational value in 2 to 6 weeks. You are completely replacing those brutally heavy, expensive system integrator consulting hours with autonomous, local builder and integration agents. And then there's the massive sustainability and operational cost win. Shifting from premium, centralized cloud racks running heavy AI inferences down to local M4 Pro nodes drops your continuous energy consumption from 10,000 watts to roughly 190 watts for a typical 5-node setup. You're literally cutting your energy consumption and your carbon footprint by about 50 times, simply by pushing the intelligence to the edge. When we compare the complete cost-to-benefit ratio across a typical 6-year cycle, honestly, the numbers almost look like a typo. A traditional enterprise ERP deployment with modern AI bolt-ons easily hits $25.9 million when you actually account for all the visible and hidden costs we talked about earlier. The emergE framework, across that exact same 6-year horizon, your total cost of ownership is just $384,000. It is an astounding 68 times cheaper, practically eliminating the vendor lock-in tax entirely.
So take a hard look at your IT infrastructure roadmap. If you know the old way is failing 73% of the time, if you know it's draining your budget and suffocating your department's ability to actually operate autonomously, it is time to seriously ask yourself the question we have right here. Why on earth are you still building around the center instead of the edge? The future of the mid-market enterprise is not a monolithic centralized core. It is an intelligent, agile, and highly secure edge. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It's time to finally embrace the architectural inversion.